is that we know the ending. With Gloriavale, we don't. Now, if I mention Gloriavale to you, Jackie, I knew nothing about it before seeing it, and I know you haven't seen the film. Does that mean anything to you or not?
No.
No. It meant nothing to me. Dave, to you, were you familiar with the story before you watched this documentary?
No, knew absolutely nothing about it, and even more disturbingly, I've spoken to friends in New Zealand who knew nothing about it either until this. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Because this happened in New Zealand. And Peter, I'll ask you, did you know anything about Gloriavale?
I've been to Christchurch and I've heard about this collective or this group, but I didn't know much about them until seeing this film.
Okay, so it's 89 minutes. It's M-rated. It's a New Zealand fundamentalist church, Jackie, and it was founded in 1969 by a person called Neville Cooper. Although I don't think he's referred to in this documentary as Neville Cooper because he changed his name to Hopeful Christian.
Yep.
And so this church is under the spotlight in the documentary. The community is located on the west coast of the South Island, and it's home to about 600 people from 70 families. It stands accused of slave labour and exploiting women who are seen dressed in long blue dresses with white highlights and also wearing white bonnets. So it's accused of slave labour, exploiting women and children. And it pushes the point, this documentary, that everyone, is subject to the say-so of the church leaders. That women have to adhere to the wishes of men and are workhorses. A court case is mounted by a man called John Reddy, who was excommunicated by the church after reading religious material that was not produced by Gloriavale. John was born inside the compound, that is, the church, and left behind his wife and children when he was excommunicated. He has been left traumatised by his experience. Also brought up inside Gloriavale was his sister Virginia Courage, who also left and tells of what she encountered. So does John. It appears that women are mandated to procreate and have large families. Living conditions are less than ideal. The documentary includes interviews with a couple of barristers, a human rights investigator, a former police detective, and the manager of a grievance organisation. Vision includes historic and often ropey home video. We learn that when someone joins Gloriavale, they give up their individual assets in favour of the Christian community. Gloriavale set up a charitable trust that's apparently worth, now get this, more than $60 million. I presume that's 60 million New Zealand, which is almost the same as Australia. It owns farms, cattle, runs 4,000 head of cattle, honey business. It's involved in oil well exploration. I mean, yeah, what this has to do with the church, I don't know, but it's a way of making money. Some members of the church, including its founder, have been found guilty of sexual offences. And later, we're introduced to John and Virginia's mother, who is still a member of the church and gave birth to 13 children and has 75 grandchildren. Some of her experiences are laid bare. So one court case leads to another, and as the documentary ends, legal action continues. That is Gloriavale. Now, does that interest you, Jackie, as somebody who hasn't seen it but knows about the family?
Very much. A documentary style is great watching. I'd love to see it.
All right, so let's start with you, Dave, on this one. It's been co-written and co-directed, or written and co-directed by Noel Smythe. Is it Smythe or Smith? S-M-Y-T-H. I'm not sure about the pronunciation. Alongside Fergus Grady. And the pair last collaborated on another doco I saw called Camino's Skies. So, did this impress you or not, Gloriavale?
It did. It's an awkward documentary. I had the chance to actually interview the two guys that put this documentary together, and to me, it's not as good as the other documentary that comes out this week, Firefront, which I thought was brilliant. But that is largely because they were hamstrung a lot with this documentary with legal stuff. But look, I take my hat off to them for doing this documentary because, as they said during the interview, not a lot of people have ever actually gone out and made a documentary about this largely because the guys behind Gloriavale allegedly have the inkling to do some things to stop these things from happening. And these two guys were quite afraid when they were making this film about what would happen. But yeah, I take my hat off to them for getting this out there. I think it could have had a lot more impact if we'd heard more from some of the victims, because there's times during this documentary where you kind of think, well, is this really what's happened, or is this just a guy with a grievance against these people, which is unfair, I know, because it's pretty horrific what happens, but I think I would like to have heard more interviews with victims. They talked about the fact that there's a charity that's been set up that people who have left Gloriavale have become part of. I would like to have heard more of their stories as well. I still think it's a great documentary, and I think it's a good documentary, but I think it could have been a little bit more hard-hitting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I reckon the negative perception of the church is highlighted. Several elements regarding the goings-on inside are introduced, but it tends to meander, and it loses momentum, Peter, and that bothered me. That the lack of finality is also a concern, even though the doco mounts a strong case, and you get the feeling that the church will do all it can to fight any legal action brought against it. I felt that it needed to be a bit more razor sharp, especially towards the last third of it. What did you think?
To some extent, I agree, but I think it does its best to try and portray a cult that isn't particularly well known. And I suppose having a couple of people who talk about their insights into being part of this group in Gloriavale serves as something to give us an insight into what was going on. I mean, there are some echoes to Scientology, to other cults where people are pretty much brainwashed or convinced to be part of a group, a bit like communism, I suppose, to be part of a group and not to question it and to accede to anything that you're being told or asked to do, because it's for the betterment of yourself and for the community. So I think a lot of that is revealed in the documentary. I can see the legal aspects of this because it's an ongoing community, and they had to tread carefully. I think what we are told still serves as a pretty good insight into this rather strange and interesting cult.
Well, it's not the first cult-like organisation that's faced opprobrium, and it won't be the last, I dare say. It shines a light on what is a secretive New Zealand community, which in recent times has received significant media coverage in New Zealand, I would suggest. But I would have liked to have seen even greater clarity and direction and more, a horrible word, but specificity than what I saw on film here. It just lost me towards the end, and I last 20 minutes or so, I would have liked to have seen more people talking, and I understand because of the legalities that would have been potentially difficult, and we've got to tread carefully even in terms of what we can say about it because of the ongoing legal action. So it's called Gloriavale. It's rated M. Running time is 89 minutes. Dave, score out of 10 from you, please.
6 out of 10 from me.
6 out of 10 from me, and from you, Peter.
Look, I think it had a lot to offer, and there should be a sequel down the track, but I quite liked it. I gave it 7 out of 10.
Okay, fantastic.